Praise to you, O Christ, King of eternal glory. Praise to you, O Christ, King of eternal glory. From the bright cloud the Father's voice was heard. This is my Son, the beloved, listen to him. Praise to you, O Christ, King of eternal glory. Praise to you, O Christ, King of eternal glory.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. At that time, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was altered, and his clothing became dazzlingly white. And behold, two men were talking with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his departure, which he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep. But when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. And as the men were parting from him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. As he was saying these things, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my Son, my chosen one. Listen to him. And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. The Gospel of the Lord. You know, we in Erskine are really lucky with our bus service. It's great. But those of you who travel on the buses on a regular basis know that it can be a bit hit and miss. With McGill's buses, and there are other bus companies available, but not in Erskine, it depends on the driver. Some of the drivers are great. Some of the drivers think it's a Formula One race that they're involved in. A short time ago, I was coming back from Paisley, and I got on the bus there. And the driver was of the Formula One variety. I mean, he was unbelievable. He cut people up. At times, I couldn't guarantee that he was speeding, but it certainly felt that he was going fast for the conditions. And when he went round the corners, everybody had to hang on to their seat to stay put. You know, and the bus seats they're kind of slidey, so you're hanging on. And I kind of looked round, and you could see people were uncomfortable with this. This wasn't a pleasant journey. And we got to Shannon, and it was about the time of the day where there would be a shift change. And the bus stopped. The driver kicked open his cab door and left the bus and went into the office. He left the bus with the engine running and his cab door open. And I was sorely tempted just to drive myself home. And we sat there for about 5 minutes, which was really strange, because normally when there's a shift change, the new driver is waiting at the bus stop. But we sat there for 5 minutes. And eventually, the new driver turned up. And he got on the bus. And the first thing he did was he said, "I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that you've had to wait this long. I'm sorry for this delay. You see, what was happening as I was coming out to do my shift, and my boss grabbed me to have a word with me. He said, I thought I was getting fired, but here I am. And if you bear with me for a few moments, I'll get you back on your journey." So then he got into the cab, started driving, came to the first corner, no problem. You didn't have to hang on to your seat. It was fine. And then I noticed that when we came to the first stop, and some people were getting on, and he was all smiles, and we could hear him saying, "So where are we going today, ladies? Where can I take you to?" And they said something like, "We're going to Clydebank." "You're going to go and spend your money. I hope you enjoy it." You know, he engaged with them. And then further up the road, someone was getting off, and, you know, he was saying, "Cheerio, you have a really good day, and thank you for traveling with us today." And it was brilliant. He did that all the way through until the bus stop before mine. There was 2 elderly ladies sitting in a seat, and they pressed the bell for the bus to stop. And they were obviously a bit uncomfortable on their feet, and they didn't want to get up while the bus was still moving. So they waited. But as soon as the bus stopped, in a panic, they got up, grabbed their shopping bags, and started to work their way down the bus. And the driver was watching them, obviously. And he turned around and he says, "Ladies, relax. Don't hassle yourself. I'm not going to drive away with you. I'll wait till you're ready. Please take your time." And as they were getting off, he said to them, "Have a good day and safe home." And then the 2 ladies got onto the pavement. And I think, obviously, they needed hearing aids, but they haven't got hearing aids. So they shouted at one another. And one said to the other, "Isn't it great when you get a lovely bus driver?" I just thought that was wonderful. And I could see the bus driver through his mirror. And his face just lit up. He had a huge big smile on his face. And I looked round at my fellow passengers, and they were all smiling too. What a contrast between this guy and the first guy. Now, I know we shouldn't judge people, and we have to have more compassion than anything. I don't know what that poor first driver is carrying about in his life, but I can tell you this, we weren't getting the best version of him. During this season of Lent, we have a series of homilies about getting fit for life eternal. You know how to get fit, to keep yourself healthy, to look after yourself? You have to exercise. You know, you have to use your muscles. You have to put them through their paces. Otherwise, they get weak and they stop working properly. You have to exercise your lungs and your heart to keep them in good condition. Well, the spiritual life is exactly the same. If you don't exercise your faith, it will wither. It will grow weak. And this time of Lent, the church offers us just some exercises to do so that we can grow in faith and be strong in our faith. In the gospel today, we hear of the transfiguration of the Lord. That Jesus takes 3 of his inner disciples, because he's got a special task for them later on, and he takes them up the mountain and to pray. And whenever we hear in the scriptures Jesus praying, we know that something significant is about to happen. And he's at prayer. And as usual, the disciples are weary and falling asleep. But Jesus, when they wake and see him, he was transfigured. Dazzlingly white, his face had changed. You know, if we're really thinking about this, there's a connection here with Moses in the Old Testament. When Moses went up the mountain to receive the new covenant from God, he was in the presence of God. And when he came down the mountain, his face had changed. He was shining brightly. So much so that his people said to him, Moses, you need to cover your face. It's blinding us. And here we have Jesus transfigured on the mountain. And what's significant here, it's not just about Jesus showing his power. This is a revelation of Christ in his glory. This is a revelation that the person that we are looking at in Jesus is the very Son of God incarnate among us. This is about our salvation. And there's a connection here with the transfiguration and the cross. There's a connection between this and the passion of Jesus. We're reflecting on his passion, his death, his resurrection. And after his resurrection, he takes his place in glory with the Father. So this is a taster of that. And interestingly, in Luke's Gospel, we hear of Moses and Elijah. And they represent what we call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. And that's revealing to us that this Christ is the fulfillment of the promises that God has made through the Old Testament, through the law and through the prophets. You know, when Adam and Eve sinned, God immediately put into action a rescue plan. And basically the Old Testament is just a testament about God exercising this rescue plan. But now it's coming to fulfillment in the person of Christ Jesus. This is the rescue plan coming good. And interesting, in Luke's Gospel, not only are Moses and Elijah there, they are speaking with Jesus. And unlike the other Gospels who just say that they were speaking with Jesus, Luke tells us what they were talking about. They were talking about, in the translation here, which is really bad, his departure in Jerusalem. I mean, that sounds like he's waiting for a plane or something like that. What the original says, they were talking about his exodus in Jerusalem. Now, if you remember back to the people of Israel being rescued out of Egypt from slavery, they embarked on an exodus of 40 years before they came to the promised land. The exodus was the journey to the promised land. What we're about to enter into is Jesus' journey to take us to the promised land. Through his passion, through his cross, and through the resurrection. He's rescuing us not from slavery from other people. He's rescuing us from the slavery of sin and death, so that we can take our place in the eternal promised land. That's what this transfiguration is all about. And the reason that Peter, James, and John are there as witnesses to this is he wants to console them. I mean, think about this. Jesus knows that he is going to go to Jerusalem and be put to death on a cross. And his concern is not for himself, but for his disciples. He wants to encourage them before they have to experience this, so that they don't lose faith, so that they don't lose heart. He invites them here really to trust in God's rescue plan. As usual, Peter gets it spectacularly wrong. He is overwhelmed by this experience. And he says, it's good for us to be here. This is marvelous. This is wonderful. So let's build three tents. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And what's Peter up to? Well, whenever you experience something really good in your life, you don't want it to go away. You want to stay there. I don't know if you've ever had a really powerful experience of God in your life where you felt so close to Him and He was so close to you. And perhaps even moved you to tears. You felt His presence so strongly. And you just don't want it to stop. You don't want it to go away. And that's what Peter's doing. He's saying, I want to stand still. So let's make this concrete. Let's solidify it. Let's build things. But that can't be the way of the disciple. A disciple cannot stand still. Jesus is not going to stay on the mountain. He's got a task to do. And Peter must do the same. And it's though God ignores Peter. You know, Peter wants to build tents, and God says, you're not on, and appears in a cloud. Now, think about this. We're going back to Exodus again. We think in here that Luke is just telling us that a cloud appeared on the mountain. He's telling us much more than that. If you remember, when the people of Israel went into the wilderness to begin their 40-year journey, God led them at night with a pillar of fire, and He led them in the day by what? A cloud. He covered them and protected them with this cloud. So the cloud reveals to us the very presence of God. God is with His people to protect them, to lead them, and to guide them. And then we hear the call. This is my Son, my chosen one. Listen to Him. And that's the invitation of this second Sunday in Lent. To listen to Him. He is the chosen one who is leading us to the promised land, who is freeing us from the bonds of sin and death, that we might have life eternal. So listen to Him. Last week I gave you some exercises for the week. So the workout plan for this week builds on last week. Last week was focused mainly on developing a prayer life, a disciplined prayer life in your life. This week, we move to the next stage. So, for this week, I want you to make a commitment, to make a heartfelt commitment to infuse everything you do with love. Do everything with a spirit of love. You know, if you're washing the dishes, do it with love. If you're driving a bus, do it with love. When you encounter one another, do it with love. Do it with love to your family and your friends and your loved ones. But when you encounter people that you don't know, treat them with love. The way you treat the shop assistant. The way you treat people who help you. Just infuse what you do with love. Because, like that good bus driver, that love will permeate through not only your life, but the lives of those that you touch and encounter. So the second thing this week, embrace your struggles and challenges as powerful opportunities for growth and transformation. Accepting and offering up personal trials can lead to a deeper reliance on God. Very often when we have trials or hardship in our lives, our first reaction is to say, God, take this away. And that is perfectly valid as a prayer. None of us want to suffer. None of us want hardship. But I don't know what your experience is, but I know my experience in my life that the times of greatest growth have been the times that I've had to endure some kind of hardship. It's in hardship we learn to trust God. It's in hardship we can deepen our relationship with Him. So if you're in a place just now in your life where you are suffering for whatever reason, where you are experiencing hardship or pain, then yes, if it's God's will, pray to Him to take it away. But if He's trying to teach you something, then just open your heart into your hardship and ask God to be there with you.